You know, sometimes I feel like a broken record, repeating myself time and time again. In fact, if you were the kind of person to play drinking games, I think you'd probably be able to get rather merry taking a sip of your favourite beverage every time I said a number of different things. Oh, like it's hard to bring a vehicle to market, that the electric auto industry needs more than just one company in order to transition the world to cleaner, greener vehicles. That not everyone can afford or wants a $35,000 or $55,000 car. That everyone's needs are different, and that range per charge and official mileage estimates are just that, estimates. Your mileage in the real world may and will vary. And then there's one other thing that I remind you all fairly frequently. The auto industry history books are littered with the names of car companies which never actually brought a vehicle to production. Car companies that wanted to revolutionise the world and just never made it. Companies that ran out of money. And car companies that promised so much more than they could possibly deliver. What I don't talk about very much, though, are those other rare companies, the ones that come back after being dead, companies that are either purchased up and find their way back into the spotlight, and only a handful have done it to date, but not one has managed to get successful, sustainable cash flow after being resurrected, be it through a buyout of original IP, a rebranding, or even a re-engineering of the original design. But today I'm talking about one such company, Aptera, a company which has not only returned from the grave, but one which, thanks to nearly a decade's worth of improvements in the electric vehicle world, does seem intent on delivering the promise of a two-seat motorcycle substitute that is so energy efficient it can drive more than 10 miles or 16 kilometres per kilowatt hour of energy. I'm going to look at the crazy claims being made of this vehicle in a second, but first let's take a look back into the history books to see where the original Aptera got to, and then we can see what's changed now. Aptera was founded in 2006 by Steve Fambro under the name of Accelerated Composites, but soon changed its name to Aptera, announcing the same year that it had a three-wheeled hybrid vehicle design that would achieve 330 miles per gallon, which is 0.71 litres of fuel per 100 kilometres. This would be travelling at a constant 65 miles per hour or 105 kilometres per hour. One of Fambro's first hires was Chris Anthony, an expert in composite materials who had previously built boats designed for use with wakeboards. Less than a year later, we got to see that vehicle in the form of the Aptera Type 1 prototype, a hybrid vehicle which was legally classified as a motorcycle and showcased during a TED conference. As to the name, well, that comes from the Greek meaning wingless, a nod to the fact that the Type 1 looked to all intents and purposes like a wingless aircraft, with a sleek aerodynamic body and its covered front wheels sitting off-board of the main fuselage? It was, at the time, unlike anything we'd seen, and by the time that 2008 came along, had split into two different models, the Aptera 2H Hybrid and Aptera 2E Electric. Competing in the Progressive Insurance Automotive X Prize, Aptera continued its development, and a new CEO joined in the form of Paul Wilbur, Fambro stepping down from the role to focus on the technical development of the vehicles in his role as the company CTO. Like many new startups, Aptera's plans for launch started to get delayed and cash flow became an issue. The US federal government had its Advanced Technology Vehicles Manufacturing Loan Program, something which helped many automakers at the time, including Tesla, Nissan and Ford, to get low-interest loans in order to fund new, cleaner, greener vehicle development. It was at this point, though, that Aptera hit a roadblock because the AVTM loan program wasn't originally intended for three-wheelers, which the Aptera 2H and 2E were, and the company was originally denied funding. Only after substantial lobbying efforts did it manage to change that and reapplied for a loan. However, by November 2009, under the new management, things weren't going well at Aptera, and both of its founders left. While the Aptera 2H and 2E were still very much creating a buzz to anyone who saw them for the first time, the company was struggling. And that's not without trying. I mean, it cameos in the 2009 reboot of Star Trek, driving along outside of Starfleet headquarters, Clearly, someone at Paramount or Bad Robot thought it looked suitably futuristic to get transported into the 23rd century. Yes, I'm a nerd. Bite me. Or live long and prosper. Maybe more appropriate. Despite that cameo, however, Aptera's future started to look grimmer and grimmer. By 2011, it had begun to return customer deposits, and with the original founders gone, things weren't going well. The company had abandoned its plans for the three-wheelers, and it was trying to build a four-wheeled, more conventional vehicle, partly to get AVTM money. But the end seemed inevitable, and it declared bankruptcy. In a 2011 interview on this channel with Steve Fambro, which we republished last night, we discussed what had gone wrong after videos of the Aptera prototypes being smashed up hit the headlines. Steve told us then that his original vision for the vehicle, a lightweight three-wheeler, wasn't the same vision that the new executive team that came in 2008 had. He'd originally intended to build a three-wheeled enclosed motorcycle, one that could use the carpool lane and was efficient, and that used ultra-lightweight, strong materials. By the time he and Anthony had left the firm, it was more intent on building a larger four-seat car. The prototypes, we understand, were crushed shortly after they left, about the same time that the new leadership team decided to make the said four-wheeler. But the money and the enthusiasm wasn't there as it originally once was. And while the original company returned deposits, some people didn't actually get them. And there the company's story ended. But a year ago, the original founders decided to bring a new company to market designed to bring the original vision of the Aptera back alive. They announced a crowdfunding campaign to kickstart development of the new Aptera Series 3, and we've seen development since. And on Friday, it started taking deposits for a new vehicle, releasing a whole lot of information about the reborn Aptera, including where it's similar and where it's different. First, let's look at the obvious. The reborn Aptera 3 looks very similar to the original design. And there is a reason for this. While it doesn't look like anything on the road, it is super aerodynamic, with a coefficient of drag of just 0.15. For those who don't know, the coefficient of drag is a way of measuring how aerodynamic an object is. The higher the number, the less aerodynamic it is. The lower the number, the more aerodynamic it is. And when it comes to cars, it's common today to see coefficients of drag between 0.2 to about 0.5. My daily driver, the Chevrolet Bolt EV, has a coefficient of drag of 0.33. The original Honda Insight we have on our driveway, complete with its wheel spats, has a coefficient of drag of 0.25, which, as it happens, is the same as the Tesla Model X. The Tesla Model 3, though, comes in at 0.23, which partly explains why it's so darned energy efficient, and the Porsche Taycan Turbo, but not the Turbo S, has an astonishing 0.22 coefficient of drag. The General Motors EV1 and Volkswagen XL1, two cars that I've had the pleasure of spending some time with, and in the case of the XL1 actually driving, have coefficients of drag of 0.19, and we know how efficient both of these vehicles were. The nickel metal hydride equipped EV1, for example, is claimed to have been capable of travelling more than 150 miles per charge from its 26 and a bit kilowatt-hour battery pack, at least when driven carefully. Because of the Aptera's shape and its lightweight composite construction, just like the original Apteras, the shell of the car is deceptively strong, by the way, just like the BMW i3's Life module, as well as being lighter than traditional steel or aluminium construction. The Aptera is inherently efficient, and the lighter something is, the less energy it needs to go down the road. Like the earlier Apteras, the Series 3s also keep their upward hinging doors, but seem to have a new window design that's closer to the windows found on the Volkswagen XL1. Unlike early production prototypes of earlier Apteras, which had rear-view mirrors, the vehicle being demonstrated now seems to have rear-view cameras, which would further improve aerodynamic drag. At this point, though, I should point out that in the US, side rear-view cameras in place of traditional side rear-view mirrors are still illegal. Tesla and others have been trying to change the law on this, and it's not clear when or if that law will change, but I'm going to suggest that we're probably going to see rear-view mirrors on the Aptera when it comes to market. And that's a big if, but let's talk about that later. The other major differences, though, between the third series Aptera and its predecessors, well, that comes down to power, battery, and charging capabilities. Rather than have a single 82 kilowatt motor, the new Apteras offer in-wheel motors with a choice of 100 kilowatts combined driving the front wheels, or a three-wheel drive system offering 150 kilowatts of total power. In something as lightweight as the Aptera 3, that should give some impressive performance. And Aptera claims a 3.5 second sprint time. It also says that both models are electronically limited to 110 miles per hour or 177 kilometers per hour. Which brings me to its claimed energy efficiency. Thanks to newer, modern motor technologies, improved power electronics, and the weight savings that those bring, Aptera is now claiming that the 25 kilowatt-hour entry-level Aptera will manage 250 miles per charge. Its range-topping one, with a 100 kilowatt-hour battery variant, will offer more than 1,000 miles per charge. Charging comes from an onboard charger, which in the video promoting the car looks surprisingly like the Tesla charging port. When asked about this in the Aptera forums, the team behind the new Aptera said that they can't talk about it for now. Elon Musk is known to hate three-wheelers, so it's certainly not a foregone conclusion that Aptera has managed to get into a deal with Tesla to use its charging infrastructure. That said, we know Tesla has entertained such a possibility in the past, and the Aptera is certainly very different to anything Tesla currently offers, so the risk of competing against Tesla is low. Aptera also lists DC quick charging on its website as standard with up to 500 miles of range per hour on DC quick charging stations. That does suggest it won't use Tesla superchargers, but I could be wrong there. Interior-wise, there are some similar design elements to the Tesla Model 3, including a large touchscreen, which is a lot cleaner and creates more space inside than the previous version of the Aptera. But it's not clear if Aptera is going to be developing everything in-house or not. But that said, the new third series car looks suitably up to date for modern use. But the other thing that's really interesting, like the original, there are solar panels on the roof of the Aptera. But unlike the original, which used them for operating air fans for air conditioning, the Aptera 3 has the ability to charge up its traction pack from those cells in what it calls its Never Charge solar array. Depending on which solar panel package you go for, Aptera claims for up to 40 miles per day of solar range just from the solar panels, stating that the Aptera is a car that you might never have to plug in. However, let's be really clear here. Solar roofs are only as good as the sun exposure they get, and if you're in southern parts of the US, Aptera is based in San Diego, you're probably pretty lucky, and you probably will get the claimed range. But everywhere else, well, it is going to give you less range per day. Size-wise, the Aptera is only a two-seater, despite being almost as long as a regular car, but that does mean there's a surprising amount of cargo space in the rear. Aptera is offering customers what it calls a pet package to allow them to carry their dog in the rear safely. That's assuming they don't want to use that 25 cubic feet or 707 litres of cargo space for carrying cargo. There's also an optional camping kit, which lets you camp in the vehicle overnight, a level 2 autonomous package, promised enhanced audio system, and an off-road package, which gives you more clearance and has tougher wheel covers, which I'd suggest you might want anyway. As to price, Aptera is offering the entry-level Aptera for $25,900 before incentives. That's for the 250-mile or 362-kilometre 25 kilowatt-hour variant. The highest trim 1,000-mile, which is 1,609-kilometre car, will retail from $46,900 before incentives. Two other options, a 600 and a 400-mile variant, will sit in between the two. Like most startups bringing new vehicles to market, customers can place a $100 deposit down to get a place in the queue to own one, which is probably the best time to tell you, in full interests of being completely transparent and sticking to our editorial policy, that's what I've done. Not from my company bank account, I hasten to add, nor my joint bank account, but my own personal bank account. A deposit on an Aptera. Why? Well, that's an interesting question. As an automotive journalist, I know full well that Aptera faces an uphill struggle to get anything to market. It seems the odds are very much against it in pretty much every single way. But I also feel that the original Aptera, for all of its design and aerodynamic qualities, was let down by the technology of the time and the company management. Things have changed a lot since then, and I think maybe now the advancements in battery and motor controllers mean that a car like the Aptera can exist, at least as a niche market vehicle. And as I'm sure many of you know by now, I have a penchant for weird, unusual three-wheelers. Plus, as my partner told me, it's a lot safer than a motorcycle. I'm not holding Aptera to its promised 2021 launch date. In fact, I don't think it will reach that point in any way, and I'm not 100% certain we'll actually see a vehicle make it into production. But unlike so many automakers out there in the startup world who have little more than a 3D rendering, Aptera currently has a working vehicle. It has the experiences from its first time around to hopefully bring a better vehicle to market. Moreover, the team at Aptera have been working on it for some time, and its original founders are back at the helm, not the person who was in charge when the company went bankrupt. It's a little bit like Steve Jobs returning to Apple. But the real reason I decided to put down $100, that'll be the company's attitude towards right to repair. It has stated that it supports the right to repair and is not interested in a closed-wall scenario. And as someone who rallies against companies who don't support the right to repair, I would be missing out if I didn't. Will it change my reporting? No. I think I'm probably going to be as tough on Aptera, maybe even tougher, as I would be if I wasn't a reservation holder. I'm going to try and be critical of what it's doing wrong and give praise of what it's doing right, which is what I try to do with every other company in the sector. I want to know if these range estimates are really achievable or not. I have some doubt. And the jury is frankly out on whether this vehicle will deliver. I guess I'll find out. If it happens, it happens. If not, then that is okay too. But if it does enter into production, I'll have a fun, quirky motorcycle substitute that is the most energy efficient vehicle made. A car that appeared in Star Trek, no less. And the nerd in me likes that. A lot. That's it. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.